Tonight, let's take a quiet journey back to a time when the world felt a little bigger, a little slower, and full of wonder. We're standing at the edge of the ancient Mediterranean Sea, and the waves are whispering stories of a city made of marble and light. A city called Alexandria. Now, if you're picturing dusty ruins or crumbling walls, hold that thought. We're going back to the beginning, because tonight, Alexandria isn't just a name in a history book. It's alive. It's glowing. It's a dream. You can smell the salt in the air. You can hear the creak of wooden ships docking by the harbor. And somewhere nearby, a musician plucks a slow, sleepy tune on a lyre. The sun has just dipped below the horizon, leaving the sky painted with soft pink and gold. It's twilight, that peaceful time when the world feels like it's holding its breath. Look around. The streets are made of pale stone, smooth and cool under your feet. Lanterns swing gently in the sea breeze, their flames reflecting off tall marble columns. Merchants pack away their goods, rolling up woven carpets, tying ropes, and calling out last-minute deals in half a dozen languages. You might hear Greek, Egyptian, Hebrew, Latin, all blending together like a sleepy song, because Alexandria wasn't just any city. It was the meeting point of the world, a crossroads where East met West, where science met story, and where curiosity was more valuable than gold. Now, we could thank one man for all this, a guy with great hair and even greater ambition. Alexander the Great. He wasn't from here, of course. He was Macedonian, a conqueror with a dream that stretched farther than the horizon itself. Everywhere he went, he wanted to build cities that carried his name, kind of like an ancient influencer, leaving his tag on the world, conquered by Alex. But Alexandria, this one was special. It wasn't just built for soldiers or kings. It was built for ideas. Alexander dreamed of a place where the knowledge of every land could live together, where philosophers could debate under the same sky, where scientists could measure the stars, and poets could whisper verses by the sea. It was meant to be the world's great mind, built out of stone and story. Sadly, Alexander didn't live long enough to see it finished. He died young, before the dream took full shape. But his vision didn't fade. His generals carried it forward, and one of them, Ptolemy I, took the throne of Egypt and said, "All right, let's make this city shine." And shine it did. Alexandria became a lighthouse for knowledge, quite literally, because just down the coast stood the Pharos of Alexandria, a lighthouse so tall it was counted among the 7 wonders of the ancient world. It guided sailors safely into the harbor, its fire burning through the night. Imagine it, a flame so bright that even miles out at sea you could see it dancing across the water. For travelers, that light meant home. For dreamers, it meant inspiration. And just beyond the Pharos, stretching inland, the heart of the city pulsed wide boulevards, shining temples, open courtyards, where scholars strolled and debated beneath palm trees. The air carried the scent of myrrh and ink. Yes, ink, because Alexandria wasn't only a city of trade, it was a city of words. Every ship that docked here brought more than spices and silk. It brought stories, scrolls filled with knowledge, history, and wonder from across the ancient world. And those scrolls would soon have a home in the greatest library the world had ever seen. But we'll get to that part later. For now, Imagine standing in the city square as the stars begin to appear overhead. The first ones twinkle faintly, like shy thoughts in a dreaming mind. A cool breeze drifts in from the harbor, and everywhere people are still awake, talking softly, laughing, writing by candlelight. Alexandria never really slept. It just hummed, like a city dreaming with its eyes open. You might pass by a baker closing his stall, the smell of warm bread still clinging to the air. A young poet is sitting on the steps, scribbling verses about the sea. And at the corner of a quiet street, an astronomer tilts a polished bronze sphere toward the stars, murmuring calculations to himself. Maybe he'll discover something tonight. Or maybe he'll just stare at the sky and think how beautiful it all is. Either way, it's knowledge, and in this city, knowledge was sacred. Alexandria wasn't loud like Rome or proud like Athens. It was thoughtful, a place where even silence felt intelligent, where the rhythm of waves could sound like a heartbeat, steady, wise, eternal. And somewhere in that calm, a spark of an idea begins. The idea of collecting everything humanity knows. Every story, every theory, every scrap of wisdom from every shore. To preserve it, to study it, to share it. That spark will soon grow into the flame of the Library of Alexandria, a place where knowledge would live forever. But for now, the city is still quiet, still dreaming of what it could become. You take one last look around, the soft golden glow of torches, the laughter of strangers, the endless sea beyond. And as you listen, you realize something. This city isn't just made of stone and marble. It's made of curiosity, of people who wanted to understand the world, not conquer it. People who believed that learning was a kind of magic, one that could outlast empires. The night deepens, the waves hush, the moon climbs higher, painting silver paths across the water. Somewhere, a scribe dips his pen into ink, the first words of history still drying in the lamplight. Maybe he's writing about Alexander, or maybe, just maybe, he's writing about you, the traveler who arrived at sunset, curious and quiet. So, take a deep breath. Let the sea breeze fill your lungs. Listen to the whisper of this ancient city, still alive in your imagination. Because, though thousands of years have passed, Alexandria still shines in memory, in legend, and in every heart that still wonders what was lost and what was found. Close your eyes and imagine walking through the ancient harbor. The night is calm, the stars are bright, and the city of light still glows, just for you. When Alexander the Great left the world, he left behind more than battles and statues. He left an idea, a dream stitched into the heart of the city that carried his name. And after his death, that dream didn't fade away with the dust of his empire. It passed into the hands of one of his old friends, a man named Ptolemy. Now, Ptolemy wasn't your typical ruler. He wasn't just swinging swords and shouting commands. He was a thinker, a planner, and honestly, maybe a bit of a nerd, the kind of king who would rather draw maps than march armies. He'd followed Alexander across deserts and battlefields, seen the edge of the known world, and thought, yeah, this world's pretty amazing. Maybe we should write some of this down. So, when the dust settled and Alexander's empire split into pieces, Ptolemy looked around and claimed Egypt, and with it, the city of Alexandria. But he didn't want it to be just another capital. He wanted it to be a beacon, a place that could outshine the rest of the world, not through war or gold, but through knowledge. Imagine him standing near the palace quarter one quiet morning, the sea glimmering nearby, palm trees swaying. He looks out across the harbor and says, "We'll build something that even time will remember." And that's how the Library of Alexandria began. It didn't start as a single giant building. It started as an idea so big it needed generations to bring it to life. Ptolemy I laid the foundation, quite literally, in the royal quarter, near the great palace where the marble gleamed under the sun. Here, scribes and builders worked side by side. Stone after stone, the first halls began to rise, tall, bright, and open to the sea breeze. You could hear chisels tapping, hammers echoing, and somewhere in the background, a philosopher already arguing with someone about what color truth might be. And when Ptolemy I grew old, his son Ptolemy II picked up the torch, or maybe the oil lamp, and said, "All right, Dad, I'll finish what you started." You can almost hear the royal sigh under Ptolemy II. Alexandria's library truly began to take shape. This wasn't just a royal hobby anymore. It became a mission to collect every story, every text, every fragment of thought from every corner of the known world. How ambitious was that? Let's just say, if Google existed back then, the library would have wanted to download everything. Ships that entered the Alexandrian harbor were searched, not for gold or spices, but for books. Any scroll found on board was carefully borrowed, copied by the library's scribes, and then, sometimes, returned. Sometimes doing a lot of heavy lifting in that sentence. The rulers didn't just want Greek knowledge, they wanted it all. From Egypt, they gathered sacred papyri filled with ancient hymns and star charts. From India came scrolls about mathematics and medicine. From Persia, poetry and philosophy. From Babylon, tablets filled with the secrets of the stars. If someone somewhere had written something interesting, Alexandria wanted a copy, and so the library grew, not only in size, but in soul. Picture it now. Tall halls lined with wooden shelves, each one heavy with rolled papyrus scrolls, their edges marked with tiny colored threads. Scribes move quietly along the aisles, carrying bundles of parchment. Scholars sit at long wooden tables, dipping their reed pens into small bowls of ink, their hands stained with black smudges. The smell of ink, oil lamps, and sea air fills the room, an odd mix, but somehow comforting. Outside, the soft murmur of the city blends with the gentle scratching of pens. It's like a heartbeat. Everywhere, minds are working. Someone is translating a poem from Persian into Greek. Someone else is drawing a new map of the stars. And in the corner, two philosophers are quietly debating, or maybe not so quietly, about whether the earth moves around the sun. One of them gestures wildly, the other just sighs. Some things never change. The library wasn't only about storing books, it was about understanding them. It became a living workshop of ideas. Teachers, poets, scientists, and mathematicians from across the world came to Alexandria to study, teach, and dream. For many, it was the closest thing to heaven on earth. There were even guest houses built just for scholars. Food, shelter, and books, all provided by the king. No tuition fees, no deadlines. Just knowledge for its own sake. Imagine that ancient Egypt had better student benefits than most modern universities. At night, the library must have looked magical. Dozens of oil lamps flickering against the marble walls, their light reflecting off polished floors. Outside, the waves brushed softly against the shore, and inside, the sound of quiet writing filled the air. A few students might be dozing off on their scrolls, and somewhere, a patient librarian carefully gathers loose pages before the ink smudges. This was the dream made real, Alexander's dream, reborn through Ptolemy's vision. A place where every voice mattered, where every word was a thread in a larger tapestry. And though the scholars didn't know it, they were building something that would echo across centuries. Some of the world's greatest minds passed through those doors. Men like Euclid, who shaped geometry, Eratosthenes, who measured the earth with astonishing accuracy, and countless others whose names are lost, but whose work still forms the backbone of what we know today. The library became the brain of the ancient world, storing memories, wisdom, and dreams. And in its calm halls, there was a quiet understanding that knowledge was a kind of light, a flame that could guide humanity through the darkness of ignorance. So, as another night falls over Alexandria, picture the library from afar. The royal quarter glows softly with lamplight. The sea outside whispers against the docks, and somewhere inside, a scribe pauses to stretch his tired hands, smiles faintly at the scroll before him, and dips his pen once more. Because in this place, even the smallest act, writing, reading, thinking, feels sacred. Every brush of ink against papyrus is a promise that the world's stories will not be forgotten, and if you listen closely, past the waves, past the murmuring scholars, you might hear it too. The gentle hum of minds at work, the rhythm of thought itself. Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine stepping into the greatest treasure room in history, but instead of gold, it's filled with ideas. The Library of Alexandria. The night outside is calm. You can hear the sea whispering against the stones of the harbor, waves brushing softly like a lullaby. But inside the library, night never really comes. There's always a candle burning somewhere, always a mind awake. You push open the great bronze doors, and the sound they make is deep and slow, like the world exhaling inside. You find yourself standing in a vast marble hall. It feels endless. The air smells of cedarwood, warm wax, and old ink. The floor is polished smooth, reflecting the gentle flicker of hundreds of small lamps dot everywhere around you. Shelves, towering shelves of scrolls, thousands upon thousands, each one a voice from somewhere far away, from Greece, Persia, India, Egypt, voices frozen in papyrus, waiting for someone curious enough to listen. You take a slow walk down the corridor. Your footsteps echo softly, like you're walking inside a dream. The lamps give off a sleepy golden glow, and the air is thick with dust motes dancing lazily. Somewhere nearby, a scribe coughs gently, politely, like even the sound is trying not to disturb the silence. You pass a table where two young scholars argue in low voices. One is Greek, the other Egyptian. They're debating whether stars are gods or just lights floating in space. They're so focused, they don't even notice you pass by at another table. A man leans over a large piece of parchment covered in lines and angles. He's drawing circles with a compass, muttering to himself about points and planes. That's Euclid, the father of geometry. If you ever had to suffer through geometry in school, well, you can thank him. But in this candlelight, he doesn't look like a math monster. He looks peaceful, calm, happy even. As if the universe makes perfect sense when you draw it with neat lines and curves. Farther down the hall, you hear the faint scratch of pens and the rustle of papyrus. A dozen scribes sit in rows, copying texts by hand, careful, steady, patient. Each stroke of their reed pens is a heartbeat of history, a promise that knowledge won't fade. There's a soft murmur that fills the air, not words you can understand, but the sound of thought. It's almost musical. Greek, Egyptian, Hebrew, Sanskrit, voices from every corner of the world, whispering wisdom into the night. You turn a corner and step into a smaller chamber, the astronomy room. Here, the air smells faintly of metal and smoke from oil lamps. Maps of stars hang on the walls, drawn on fine cloths stretched tight on frames. A few scholars huddle around a bronze sphere, an early globe of the heavens. Tiny constellations etched in metal glitter in the lamplight. One man, with bright eyes and a short beard, points toward a mark on the globe. That's Eratosthenes, the man who measured the whole earth using only shadows. He's explaining his idea to a young student who looks equal parts amazed and confused. The old scholar chuckles softly. Well, he says, you don't have to walk around the earth. Just watch the sun. The boy laughs. It's the kind of laugh that makes you feel like learning is the greatest adventure there is as you walk past. You notice a corner of the room where scrolls are stacked like sleeping cats, curled and content. Some are written in golden ink, some in red, some faded to almost nothing. There's a scroll here from India, another from Babylon. There's even one from a land no one here has ever seen, but someone sent a story. And that story found its way home. You step into another room, smaller, quieter. Here the lamps burn low, and the scent of cedar grows stronger. At a stone basin, a man carefully mixes ink, thick, black, and shining. He tests it on his palm, nods in approval, then returns to writing. The sound of his pen is soft, rhythmic, like rain tapping on wood. In the corner, Archimedes is sketching something that looks like a spiral. He's humming, lost in thought. There's a tiny smile on his face, that calm joy of someone who just understood something no one else in the world knows yet. He glances up for a second, eyes gleaming. "Oh," he says, "noticing you. Don't step there. I'm trying to measure infinity." Then he laughs quietly and goes back to his scroll. You keep walking, deeper and deeper, until you reach the Hall of Maps. It's vast, round and glowing with dozens of oil lamps. The air here feels alive, like the hum of the universe itself. Maps of the stars, of rivers, of distant lands line the walls. Some are drawn perfectly, others just scribbles of guesses and dreams. But all of them share one thing: curiosity, the endless hunger to know more. On a large table in the center lies a globe made of bronze and wood, a bit uneven, its oceans painted a deep blue. Someone left a note beside it. The world is round, but we're still learning where the edges meet. You can't help but smile. There's something warm about this place. It's not cold or formal like a museum. It feels alive. Every corner hums with energy. Every breath carries the quiet pride of people who believe in wonder. A bell rings softly somewhere in the distance. Midnight, maybe, but nobody stops working. The library never sleeps. You pass through the final hall, tall marble pillars stretching up like a forest of stone, their tops lost in darkness. Tiny lamps flicker at the base of each column, like stars caught on the ground. You can hear the sea again, faintly, through the open windows, a reminder that the world outside still turns, still waits to be understood. You pause for a moment and look back. The halls shimmer softly in the candlelight, scrolls glowing gold and brown, shadows moving like gentle waves. It's peaceful, it's beautiful, and it's humbling knowing that once upon a time, all of this existed. A place where thought burned brighter than fire, where questions mattered more than answers, where the night never truly fell, because wisdom itself was the light. You take one last slow breath. The air smells like cedar, ink, and eternity. And as you step out under the starry sky, you realize, in Alexandria, even the silence was full of knowledge. The lamps have just been lit in the library. The air smells faintly of oil, ink, and cedar, that same familiar scent that clings to every scholar's robe. Our story tonight follows one man. His name is Callias, though in truth he could be anyone, a scholar, a dreamer, one of those quiet people who lived between candlelight and scrolls. Callias begins his night the same way every evening, by lighting his oil lamp. He leans in close, shielding the tiny flame with his hand, and the light grows slowly, pushing away the shadows in his little study room. The glow catches on stacks of papyrus rolls, each tied with bits of faded ribbon. Some are Greek, some Egyptian, a few so ancient he's afraid to touch them too hard. He settles onto a wooden stool that's seen better days and unrolls a scroll. It crackles softly, like a whisper from the past. Geometry again, he sighs. Then, grinning, he mutters, "Euclid, why do your triangles never behave?" He dips his reed pen into the ink jar and begins to copy, line by line. His hand steady and slow, the sound of the pen scratching across papyrus is almost soothing, like rain tapping against stone. Outside his little window, the city hums softly, the faint rhythm of footsteps, distant laughter, and the faraway crash of waves against the harbor walls. Inside, the library is alive. A few halls away, other scholars work by the same gentle lamplight. One man studies astronomy, a bronze globe glinting beside him. Another mutters translations under his breath, comparing symbols from an Indian text to a Greek one. Two students are quietly arguing over whether the earth floats or spins. You can almost hear it, that low, peaceful hum of minds at work. It's not loud or chaotic. It's like a lullaby of thought. Callias takes a break and walks down to the scribe's chamber, the beating heart of the library here. Dozens of scribes sit at long tables, quills dancing under the light of hundreds of small flames. Each scroll is a story, a fragment of someone's life. There's a rule here. Every book that enters Alexandria must be copied. When ships arrive at the harbor, their scrolls are borrowed, copied, and returned. The originals often kept in the library, the copies sent back. It's clever and a little sneaky, but hey, all in the name of wisdom. The The scribes work in silence, save for the soft sound of brushes and reed pens now and then. One sighs, stretches his hands, or takes a sip of watered wine. The air is warm, filled with the smell of ink and melted wax. Callias watches them for a while, then joins a friend, a scribe named Demetrios, still copying Aristotle. He asks. Demetrios grins without looking up. Yes, and I think he's arguing with me. They both chuckle softly, the kind of laugh you only hear from people who've been up too late reading. Too many words beyond the main library stands another building, the Serapeum.a temple to Serapis, but also a second home for knowledge. When the library grew too full, and it often did, scrolls were sent here. The Serapeum became a sister sanctuary of wisdom, part temple, part archive, part philosopher's hideout. Tonight, the marble steps of the Serapeum glow under torchlight. Inside, philosophers sit beneath tall columns, debating quietly. Some discuss the gods, others ponder music, medicine, or dreams. You can feel the cultural mix here. Greeks in white robes, Egyptian priests in linen, a Persian scholar wearing silk, a Jewish astronomer tracing constellations on parchment. They speak in different tongues, but somehow they understand one another. It's not about language. It's about the love of knowing. There's laughter sometimes, soft and respectful. Someone shares figs and honey. Someone else pours wine. Even philosophy, it seems, goes down better with snacks. Back in the library, Callias returns to his desk. He wipes his pen carefully and begins a new scroll. An Egyptian tale about the gods who measure time. Copying is slow work. The ink dries fast. The papyrus tears easily. One mistake and you start over. But two, it isn't just work, it's devotion. Every line he copies feels like a small act of love. A way to keep wisdom alive for whoever comes next. When he's tired, he reads aloud, softly, letting the words drift through the room like gentle spells. The candle flickers, and the flame seems to dance to his voice. Some nights, he imagines the stories talking back. He imagines the scrolls whispering secrets from the past, voices of poets, scientists, dreamers. It makes him smile. It makes the long hours worth it. At dawn, the library grows quieter. The lamps burn low, and the first light of morning seeps through the tall windows. Scholars stretch, yawn, and laugh softly at each other's tired faces. Did you sleep? No. Did you? Only between scrolls. There's no rivalry here. No pride, just friendship built on curiosity. A mathematician helps a poet understand his metaphors. A philosopher helps a doctor translate a herb recipe. And Callias, the quiet scholar, shares what he learned with two young students just beginning their studies. They listen closely, eyes wide, as if every word is gold. He tells them gently, "The more you learn, the more you realize how little you know." They laugh, thinking he's joking, but his eyes are kind. He means it. As the sun rises, Callias finally sets down his pen. His scroll is finished. He ties it carefully with a strip of cloth and sets it on the shelf beside hundreds of others. For a moment, he just stands there, surrounded by the soft glow of morning and the smell of old words. He thinks about all the people who one day read these scrolls, people he'll never meet. living in times he can't imagine. He smiles. That's the beauty of it. Knowledge travels farther than any ship. He blows out his lamp, stretches his arms, and whispers to the quiet hall, "Good night, my old friends." And as the library settles into the hush of dawn, it feels like the whole city is breathing with it, calm, full, alive. In Alexandria, every whisper was a prayer to memory. If you close your eyes now, you might still hear it, the sound of the sea, restless and wild, brushing against the stone walls of Alexandria. It was the year 48 BCE. The city still glittered under the desert sun, its marble towers proud and tall, but the air was thick, not with peace this time, but with tension. Rome's shadow had stretched far and wide, and now two great names, Caesar and Pompey, were at war. One chasing the other across the Mediterranean, until both their stories came to rest for a while on the same stretch of Egyptian sand. Caesar, the conqueror, had arrived in Alexandria with only a few thousand soldiers, not to learn, not to study, but to win. He came chasing Pompey, his rival and once friend, who had sought refuge here. But what Caesar found was not a warm welcome. It was chaos. Egypt itself was caught in its own civil storm. A young Cleopatra fighting her brother Ptolemy for the throne. So when Caesar set foot in the city, he walked into a chessboard already filled with kings and queens. For a while, he stayed in the royal palace near the harbor, that same palace quarter where, long ago, Ptolemy, I had dreamed of the great library, and right next to it, the warehouse district, the docks, the scrolls, the memory of the world, all quietly waiting. But then came the siege. Ptolemy's army surrounded the harbor, trapping Caesar's forces near the water. The ships, the beautiful ships of Alexandria, became both weapon and weakness to block the enemy fleet. Caesar gave an order, one that would echo for centuries. Burn the ships. Simple words, strategic words, but fire doesn't listen to strategy. It dances where it wants to. The flames began at the docks. The first sparks licked the sails, then the wooden hulls, then leaped like wild spirits across the ropes that tied the ships to the piers. The harbor glowed orange sailcloths, curled and collapsed, and the heat, the heat rolled across the water like a living thing from the docks. The fire spread to the nearby storehouses, and among them were the warehouses that held part of the library's collection. Scrolls stacked floor to ceiling. Thousands upon thousands. Knowledge gathered from Greece, Egypt, India, Babylon, all resting quietly, unaware of their last night. No one knows exactly how it happened. Maybe a spark carried by the wind, maybe a torch dropped in panic. But what we do know is this: the flames didn't stop at the ships. They reached the books, and soon, the night sky of Alexandria was no longer dark. It glowed, a deep, trembling red. Some said it looked like dawn had arrived too. Early. Others said the sky turned the color of parchment, and if you looked closely, you might see ashes rising, curling like whispers, carrying letters and words that would never be read again. But don't imagine panic. There was no screaming crowd, no desperate running, at least not in this part of the city. Most Alexandrians didn't even realize, as they lay sleeping, that the world's greatest treasure was burning quietly by the harbor. And the scholars, those who lived for ink, thought could do nothing but watch from afar. Maybe one of them whispered a prayer. Maybe one just sat, staring into the glow, trying to remember every line of text they'd ever read when morning came. The air was heavy and gray. The once bright library corridor looked like it had been dusted in sorrow. Blackened beams, charred papyrus, fragments drifting like tiny moths in the light. But in all this stillness, life continued, because Alexandria didn't stop, not yet. The library was not just one building, it was a network of halls, of scholars, of sister buildings like the Serapeum, and many of its texts were copied, shared, and protected across those places. So, though the fire had swallowed much, it hadn't consumed everything. Maybe it's comforting to think of that. That knowledge, true knowledge, doesn't live only in paper or parchment. It lives in people, in the minds that remember, in the voices that retell. And that morning, some of those voices still whispered softly, writing down what they could recall, trying to catch what the fire had almost taken away. Caesar's war soon ended. Young and brilliant met him, and, as history tells us, their fates intertwined like vines under moonlight. But for the library, something had changed. The first wound had been made, and though it would rise again, it would never quite be the same. The scent of smoke lingered, not just in the marble halls, but in memory, a quiet reminder that even the brightest light can flicker. So as you drift tonight, picture those floating ashes in the air, tiny black butterflies carrying words through the dark, not lost, just transformed. Maybe some of those thoughts landed miles away in another scholar's dream, in another century's heart, because that's what knowledge does. It travels, and no fire, not even Caesar's, could burn every idea. And so ends this night in Alexandria, where the flames began and memory learned to survive the fire. Sleep softly, traveler of time. Tomorrow, the story continues. There's a kind of silence that doesn't come all at once. It creeps in, little by little. Not the kind that startles you, but the kind that settles softly, like dust on an old shelf. That's the silence that came to Alexandria after the great fire of Caesar's time. The city still stood, its marble streets bright, its harbor alive with ships, but somewhere inside the palace quarter, something precious had changed. The library, once the heartbeat of human curiosity, was quieter, not gone, not yet, but quieter. You can almost picture it. A few scholars still walking those long corridors, their sandals whispering on cool stone floors. A handful of scribes still copying what scrolls had survived, their oil lamps flickering like tired fireflies. But there were gaps, now spaces on the shelves where once there had been scrolls, and worse, spaces in people's hearts where once there had been purpose. You see, knowledge doesn't die in one grand blaze. It fades slowly. A lost translation here, a forgotten copy there, a missing page, a neglected library corner, where dampness starts to eat away the papyrus. No one noticed. At first, the city had other things to worry about. New rulers, new wars, new taxes. You know how it is. Life goes on, and so, bit by bit, the Library of Alexandria began to fade into something between memory and myth. A few centuries passed. Rome ruled Egypt now. The empire was mighty, but the old Greek light, the love of learning, of asking questions, had begun to dim under politics and religion. Still, the dream hadn't vanished completely. There was the the library's sister building, standing tall on a hill in Alexandria, near the great temple of Serapis. Imagine it, a place of marble pillars and gold light, where philosophers still met to read, debate, and remember. You could still hear the soft murmur of study, the turning of scrolls, the quiet joy of thought. But even that, too, was fragile as centuries rolled on. Change came not with swords this time, but with silence. Empires shifted, faiths rose and clashed, and somewhere between devotion and fear, books began to seem dangerous. People argued not about how to think, but about what to think, and for a library built on questions, that was the beginning of the end. In the late 4th century, a Roman emperor, Theophilus, ordered pagan temples closed, and in that wave of zeal, the Serapeum fell. The temple that had guarded the library's spirit for centuries was torn apart by crowds. Columns crashed, statues shattered, and the last of the old scrolls, those silent witnesses to the ancient world, were lost in the dust. No great fire this time, no single tragic spark, just neglect, anger, and time, the kind of destruction that doesn't make noise. If you walked through the ruins after that day, you might have found pieces of marble glowing in the sun, dust motes swirling in the air like golden ghosts, and maybe, if you listened hard enough, you could almost hear it, the echo of footsteps, the faint rustle of pages long gone. That's the haunting thing about loss. It leaves an echo, something you feel, even when it's invisible. For centuries after, travelers came to Alexandria, asking where the great library had once stood. Some said it was near the harbor. Some swore it had been inside the royal palace. Others claimed it had always been a myth. But the truth was simpler and sadder. It had been everywhere, not just in walls or scrolls, but in the minds of thousands of dreamers who believed that every piece of wisdom deserved to live forever. And yet, isn't it strange? Even with all that loss, the idea of the library never really died. It still lived in whispers, in the memories of those who had once studied there, in books copied elsewhere, in Rome, Athens, India, Persia, like scattered seeds carried by the wind. Maybe that's the beautiful part of it. You can burn a building, but you can't burn an idea. Sometimes I like to imagine one of those old scholars, maybe a man with tired eyes and ink on his fingers, sitting by the sea in his old age, watching the sunset and thinking, well, at least I wrote some of it down. And maybe he smiled, because he knew that even if the scrolls turned to ash, someone, somewhere, might one day dream of knowledge again. Maybe you, tonight, if you imagine those old halls. Don't picture fire or ruin. Picture peace, empty corridors filled with golden light, dust drifting like tiny stars in a beam of sun. Picture the sea whispering just outside the windows, the same sea that carried scrolls across the world, and now carries only stories. And if you listen close enough, you might hear faint voices, laughing, reading, learning echoes that never really left. So yes, the library faded, not in one night, not in one flame, but slowly, like a candle burning down to its last drop of wax. But the glow never truly went out, because in every library today, every quiet study room, every person reading by lamplight, you can still find it, that same hunger to know, to remember, to share. And that's what keeps Alexandria alive, not its walls, but its dream. So, as you drift to sleep, think of those silent halls, warm air, soft light, and the quiet hum of knowledge still lingering in the dust. It's not really gone, it's just resting, waiting for someone like you to wake it up again. Sleep well, dreamer. The library remembers you too. It's been centuries since the Library of Alexandria went silent. The marble halls turned to dust, the scrolls turned to ash, and the world moved on. But you know how humans are. We can't leave a mystery alone, especially one wrapped in fire, legend, and lost knowledge. So, our story picks up in a new age, the 19th century. The world had changed. People now carried lanterns instead of torches, notebooks instead of scrolls, and instead of emperors, we had archaeologists, curious, dusty dreamers armed with shovels and big hopes. They came to Alexandria not for gold or treasure, but for answers. Picture the scene. The early morning air is thick with sea mist, and a small team of explorers stands near the harbor. They're staring at the ground, beneath their boots, because somewhere under that earth, beneath layers of history and broken stone, might lie the bones of the greatest library that ever lived. One of them sighs and says, "Well, maybe we'll find a few scrolls." Another replies, "Or a very old rat." That's archaeology for you. A lot of dirt, a lot of patience, and a pinch of eternal optimism. The 19th century brought a rush of explorers digging through ancient Egypt. The pyramids, the tombs, the temples all slowly gave up their secrets. And so, naturally, they turned their eyes toward Alexandria. Somewhere near the old palace quarter. Beneath the modern streets and cafes, they began to find things. Not the grand halls they hoped for, not yet, but fragments, bits of papyrus, crumbled like autumn leaves, broken columns with Greek inscriptions, stone walls that led to rooms with no doors. Every discovery was small, but each felt like a whisper from the past. Imagine brushing the dirt off a carved stone and realizing your hand is the first to touch it in over 2,000 years. That kind of moment doesn't shout, it hums quietly in your chest. Archaeologist wrote in his journal, "The city sleeps upon its secrets." And he was right. Modern Alexandria is a city built over layers of itself. Greek, Roman, Arab, Ottoman, 1,000 lives stacked like pages in an old book. And somewhere between those pages, the library waits. By the 1900s, the world had changed again. We had electricity, cameras, submarines, and an even deeper hunger for history. And once again, people came searching. French, Egyptian, and Greek teams mapped the city, diving beneath the harbor with strange new equipment. Down in the murky green water, divers found marble statues, columns, and sunken courtyards. Was it part of the old palace complex? Maybe. The library? Possibly. But Alexandria wasn't giving up her story easily. She's a bit of a mystery lover. That city, she likes to keep you guessing. Still, the discoveries kept coming. A Greek theater beneath a parking lot, a temple wall beneath an apartment, and in one quiet excavation, a series of underground chambers thought by some to be the remains of the Serapeum, the library's sister sanctuary. Every brick, every scroll fragment, every inscription became a clue, like breadcrumbs leading back through time. It's beautiful to think about, isn't it? That the same city that once called scholars from Greece, Egypt, and Persia now called to a new kind of dreamer. Scientists, historians, divers, linguists, all united by the same wish to find what was lost, and maybe, just maybe, to prove that knowledge never truly dies. One researcher once said, "The library is not gone. It has simply scattered." And I love that idea, that pieces of it live in every library, every classroom, every dusty old bookstore where someone falls in love with an idea. Then came the modern day, and a miracle of sorts. In 2002, on the shores of Alexandria, a new building opened its glass doors, the Bibliotheca Alexandria, a modern library of Alexandria, round like the rising sun, facing the sea. Inside, sunlight spills across wooden desks and glowing screens. Students from every corner of the world sit reading under murals that honor the ancient scholars. It's peaceful, it's bright, and it hums with that same quiet energy that must have filled the old halls centuries ago. They say the architects built it on or near the same ground as the original library. So maybe, just maybe, the spirit of the old library is watching, smiling softly at what humanity built from its ashes. Of course, the true ruins are still out there somewhere, under the city, under the sand, under the noise of life. Archaeologists still search. Sometimes they find another carved stone, sometimes just the sea. But the search itself has become part of the legend, because the Library of Alexandria isn't just a place anymore, it's a feeling. It's the quiet joy of opening a new book, the late-night spark when you learn something that changes how you see the world. It's every time someone writes, teaches, dreams. Knowledge burns gently like a candle, and when one flame goes out, another is lit. So, the next time you hold a book, or even scroll through a story on your phone, maybe smile a little, because in a small, quiet way, you're helping rebuild that library. And that's how the story continues, not with fire, but with hope. The Library of Alexandria may have turned to dust long ago, but its dream never did. You and I, sitting here tonight, are part of that dream. Every thought, every question, every spark of curiosity, it's all part of the same story that began beside the sea, in a city of light. So, close your eyes now. Picture the new library standing tall, glass shimmering in the sunset. Hear the soft sound of pages turning, and remember, every book we open is a small act of rebuilding the library. Good night, dreamer. May your mind wander where knowledge never ends. There's a quiet moment after every story when the words slow down, the world softens, and all that's left is the echo of meaning. That's where we are now. The fires have cooled, the scrolls have turned to dust, but something still shines. It's faint at first, like a candle in a far window. But if you listen, not with your ears, but with your heart, you can feel it. The Library of Alexandria never truly died. It just changed form. Imagine for a moment that every piece of knowledge, every idea, every story, every spark of curiosity is like a small flame. Some burn bright and loud, like bonfires. Others are quiet, flickering in corners of time. When the library burned, it might have seemed that all those flames were gone forever. But fire doesn't only destroy, it also spreads. The scholars who fled Alexandria carried their knowledge in their minds, in letters, in memories told to students and travelers. Those students taught others, and so the light spread from Greece to Rome, from Persia to India, from the banks of the Nile to every corner of the world. Even in the darkest centuries, that light never went out. It just hid in small places, monasteries, temples, quiet rooms where tired people whispered to parchment by candlelight. The library had become everyone now. Look up, not literally, unless you're outside, but in your mind. Picture the night sky over ancient Alexandria. The stars are shining, same as they did 2,000 years ago. The astronomers of the old library, people like Eratosthenes and Hipparchus, once stood by the sea, tracing patterns in that same sky. They named constellations, measured the earth, and guessed at the shape of the universe. And tonight, if you stare long enough, you'll see those same constellations, Orion, Cassiopeia, Ursa Major, just as they did. The stars, remember, they're the library's ceiling, still glowing long after the walls crumbled. Maybe that's what wisdom really is. Light that survives the fall of walls. Every person who ever wondered why or how, every child who asked too many questions, every scientist who stayed up too late with a notebook, they're all little echoes of that dream. You don't have to wear robes or study under marble arches to keep the library alive. You do it every time you learn something new, or share an idea with someone, or read a story before bed. The funny thing about knowledge, it's contagious. You can't burn curiosity. You can't silence wonder. It just finds new homes. Some people think wisdom lives in books, but maybe it lives in people, in the messy, beautiful, forgetful, hopeful minds of all of us. So, if you ever feel small or unimportant, remember this: inside you, somewhere, are the same sparks that once lit the halls of Alexandria. You are part of the same story. Let's go back there, just for a moment, to the shores of Alexandria. The night is calm. The sea hums softly, brushing against the rocks. The moon floats above, silver and slow, like it's thinking its own ancient thoughts. Somewhere beneath the city, under sand and stone, the old library sleeps, not lost, just dreaming. If you listen closely, you might still hear the faint sound of parchment turning, or maybe it's just the waves the wind carries, whispers, not of sadness, but of peace, because what was meant to be remembered was, the rest became part of the great hum of the world, the song of all things that ever were. Let's talk about light for a second. Light really die, it travels. Even when a star burns out, its light keeps moving through space, reaching eyes that will see it centuries later. That's what the library became, a star whose light still travels. You can find it in universities, in small libraries with squeaky floors, in digital archives, and in people like you, listening, learning, wondering. Maybe it's in the rhythm of a poet's words, or in the laughter of a teacher when a student finally understands, or in someone halfway across the world, lying awake, listening to this story. The light of Alexandria isn't history anymore. It's heartbeat, quiet, steady, eternal. So now, the story is slowing down. We've walked through golden halls and firelit ruins. We've watched knowledge rise, fall, and rise again. And as the waves keep brushing the shore, I want you to imagine that somewhere in the soft glow of moonlight, the library breathes, not with smoke or dust, but with peace. The sea knows its name, the stars know its story, and now you do too. So take a slow breath, let it out gently. The world's wisdom is still here, in the books on shelves, in the voices of teachers, in the calm of your own mind. You are safe. You are surrounded by the echoes of thousands of years of dreaming, and you don't have to carry it all. Just rest in it, because the library sleeps, and so should you. And so the library sleeps, not lost, but dreaming.